Say 7.2, Empty Oceans is our title. So this gets us thinking a little bit about the topic. It could possibly be a little more specific because it's not clear that we're talking about overfishing from the title, but we can guess like what is being emptied from the oceans. And if we're talking about removing too many fish, maybe the ocean is empty of fish, right? All right, a hook here. This is one of my favorite hooks, I think, in this whole book. Imagine going to a sushi restaurant that could no longer serve fish. I like this one because it just seems so ridiculous to think about sushi without fish, right? I mean, I guess there's some kinds of sushi that have egg or vegetables, but when you think of sushi, you usually think of fish. So this idea here, this hook, is getting us thinking about this topic a little bit, right? How important fish are. Um, and then the next sentence connects more directly to the topic of the essay. The first sentence, it's not really clear what the topic is. It does get us thinking about fish, but then our next sentence really gets us to the main idea here. Such a scenario may seem unrealistic, but the fish populations of the Earth's ocean face serious threats. All right, so this problem here about a lack of fish in our oceans from overfishing. Okay, so then we have a little more background information in our introduction, like land animals that have been hunted to near extinction, and we give some other examples of extinct animals or endangered animals, and then we connect it to the topic of this essay, fish and marine animals. Marine animals means animals in the ocean. They also need to be protected. Okay, and then we have our thesis statement at the end of the introduction, starting with governments. Governments must encourage sustainable fishing practices and other regulatory guidelines to ensure that the oceans preserve their variety of animal and plant life as well as sufficient fish populations. Okay, so what you notice in this thesis statement is we have the modal here, must, right? And we're talking about a specific action. Governments must encourage. So this is where the argument comes in, because some people might say, no, the government shouldn't do anything. It should be individuals, or it should be fishermen who change their ways. It's not the government's role, or the government's doing enough, some people might say, right? So here the argument is that the government is responsible, that the government must do more to protect these fish populations, okay? So the government must encourage sustainable fishing practices. So that's our main argument here. And other regulatory guidelines, so that the government needs to pass laws or needs to make policies that will benefit the oceans and the fish populations. And then we get into the reason. Why? Why should the government do this? To ensure the oceans preserve their variety of animal and plant life and sufficient fish populations. So if the government doesn't change it, in other words, we're going to have a shortage of fish. We're going to have a problem with marine life. Okay, so the government needs to make these changes, right? And then we can know from this thesis statement that the body paragraphs will explain more details about why the government needs to make these regulations. All right, on to the next page, second paragraph here. This is our first main argument. The oceans are being depleted primarily due to consumer demand for seafood, which creates a financial incentive for marine businesses to overfish. So here we're getting into the main problem. There's a high demand for seafood. That's why we're overfishing. Consumers want to eat it, and business